there, and welcome to the Big Apple School podcast, the weekly English show where we speak about everything under the sun. The major goal of this show is to help you improve your English and, of course, learn something new. My name's Katya, I'm your host, and today with me
is Ken from Manila, Philippines.
And
Maria from Russia.
Guys, we're doing our best to be as useful to you as possible. And you know what we'd like to get? Some feedback about it. Subscribe to our pages on Apple, Yandex, Google, VK, basically any platform where you listen to our podcast. Give us stars, leave us comments, review our podcast. And you know what? Feel free to send your ideas about our next episodes. It won't take much time or effort, right? But it'll help us a lot to become even better. The sky's the limit, right? So, and Ken, Marie, and I are going to discuss a very serious topic today, which is stress and mental disorders and difficulties of living in the 21st century. But before we do, I would like to have a little bit of a disclaimer. So we are going to share our experiences. Whatever we say today is going to be our subjective thoughts. So in no way do we agitate you to do something or, tell you what you have to do. So this is just our personal experience and our personal thoughts. So, Ken, Masha, on a scale from 1 to 10, how stressed is your life? I'll start with this.
Well,
all right, go ahead.
it's hard to rank it. I don't think that I'm prepared to do this right away, but maybe it depends. It depends on the period. It depends on maybe even the season. So right now, it is pretty stressed, like maybe 6.
Oh, 6 out of 10. Wow. So Ken, what about...
sorry, I don't know. Just what is 10? So maybe we need to
clarify.
distinguish.
Yeah.
Okay. So how would you expect 10 out of 10 stress to feel?
Like when you can't cope yourself and you need to go to a professional, maybe.
Okay. So
I agree with that.
So when you cannot really cope with your daily routine, maybe you cannot focus on your work, but all you can think about is how stressful you are.
Yeah,
so that would be 10. So yours is 6 out of 10. That's still pretty close.
I don't know.
All right.
I'm bad at numbers.
Yeah. All right.
You know what? I'm still on holiday right now. So I don't know, I don't feel any stress at all, at least at the moment. So I don't know how to answer your question, but I guess all I'm going to say is that I feel good right now. Mm-hmm. I'm still on my holidays. So and there's nothing
fantastic.
To worry much about, at least at the moment.
So, dear listeners, do you see right now how much Ken loves you and appreciates you, that he's here on his holiday recording the podcast? That's commitment. That's so sweet. All right. So, and do you think that in general, our lives today are more stressful than it used to be, let's say 50 years ago, 30 years ago? So what do you think?
That's really an interesting question, because you would think that today, with the advancement of technology, that lives would be much better and much easier. Mm-hmm. But ironically, more and more people are becoming more stressed. This is because life has become more fast paced. Mm-hmm. And with that, there are more demands. And I would say that the standards have become higher. There are more activities now that people can do. And unfortunately for a lot of us, we tend to do a lot of things in a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. And for the rest, or I would say, the others, they love cramming. By cramming, I mean doing things at the last minute. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, if you do that, then of course, you would feel stressed naturally. Mm-hmm. And I guess I know that it's really ironic to say this, but I totally agree that I believe life today has become even more stressful than 50 or even 60, whatever years ago.
Mm-hmm. Masha, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's not only because of technology, but mainly because of it. And also, so we switch between the tasks in a very intense way, like all the time. And also, now we have this high competition. I mean, we need to stand out professionally, like as a person. And so we need to show that we are a better version of ourselves, like all the time. Mm-hmm. And because lots of people seem to stand out.
Do you remember when we last met, we talked about social networks and how it puts so much pressure on you that nowadays it has become so much more difficult, as you said, to stand out. And there's so much pressure from everywhere. You know, whatever you do, wherever you look, there's always, you need to do this, you need to be that, you need to be that. You know, I feel like if we talk about 50, 30 years ago, so let's say the 1990s, the 1980s, I feel like at that time people did not have that much pressure. So you had a house, let's say a family, you have a job. Okay, good. You're all good. But now, how good are you at your job? So let you know, people judge the looks, people judge everything, and you feel this constant pressure.
Yeah, you need to perform well in every sphere of your life.
And you know what, speaking of which, since you brought up the topic of social networks, again, now we are more exposed to a lot of platforms and therefore we can see the lives of other people more now than before. Because, well, unlike in the past when people didn't used to have, social networks, they didn't have a way to compare themselves. Well, they could still compare themselves with, the immediate environment with within the circle of their family, friends, work, but now you can really see the world and even individual people that you don't know personally because of social networks. And unfortunately for a lot of us, I would say that we tend to compare ourselves and therefore it increases the pressure. And of course, with pressure comes stress.
Yeah. So we unanimously agree that life today tends to be more stressful. So pressure from the society. What other things cause stress in our modern fast-paced world?
This necessity to switch between lots of tasks because the rhythm of life is faster now due to the development of technology, and we drive cars and we live in big cities, and that's the thing.
And in addition to that, I think the higher demands right now, say for example, if we talk about education, I believe that in the past, subjects were not as many as we have right now. If we talk about, for example, school children, So there are newer subjects that are added in the curriculum, and therefore, it creates more pressure to the students to study even more because this time around there are more subjects to learn. So the higher, standards that we set upon ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, I can say that I believe that children and students, they are more stressed today. Not only because there are more subjects, let's be fair, there were always, quite a lot of subjects at school, but also because they are given this idea that you have exams, and if you fail, that's it, that's the end of your life. You fail your exam, you fail your career, you won't be able to achieve anything, and that's too much. Whereas I think, judging from what I heard, that earlier there was still some, exams at the end of your school period, but you always had some, chances. Okay, you don't pass them well enough, there are always opportunities for you. So, and more jobs were respected back then that are not respected now. So wait, Masha, you have a son who's school age. So do you see or do you think that he's stressed about his studies, about school?
Well, sometimes I think that he is, but I try to make it better for him just by explaining that marks are not everything, and maybe I did too much. Now he doesn't really appreciate school marks. He realized that it's not the end of the world, so he doesn't basically care. So now I need to do the opposite thing, maybe.
Oh my goodness, the hardship of being a parent.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness. And
no, not so hard. But
and I just want to add, it goes beyond the classroom because nowadays, children are, sometimes forced by their parents, not just to learn the subjects, of course, at school, but also to do some extracurricular activities. They ought to go to a dance class. They have to learn English, for example, to go to some language schools. So a lot of these out of the classroom activities that, some parents pressure their children to do, that adds to the stress.
That's so true. And I remember when I was a schoolgirl, not everyone in my class had some extracurricular activities, like maybe 5 people went to music school or art school, but not everybody. Now everybody has something. And 2, 3, as you said, extracurricular activities, and which makes parents feel stressed if their child doesn't go anywhere after school.
I would like to share an experience from the other side of the story. So several years ago, I was working at a secondary school. So I was teaching, basically almost every age from the 4th graders to the 11th graders. And the thing is that the authorities of the school, they asked me, how many children in your class have and attend some extracurricular classes? And usually that was 10 out of 25. And they said, no, that's not enough.
Yeah.
You should make the parents to sign their children up for something. You should make them attend some classes or something.
Wow.
So there was some kind of I do not know, not a limit, but a number that I had to have. So, and I felt so much pressure, from that. So I had to talk to parents and say, why don't you consider, piano classes or dance classes? But at the same time, I felt like I was lying to them, because if I know that a child doesn't want to, they just want to enjoy their childhood, basically.
That's right.
So,
so our class teacher asks us every time, which extracurricular things your children attend, and we make a list and so on.
Yeah, that's too much. So, and why is stress dangerous? We can't deny that we all have stress in our lives, but is it actually dangerous? Why is it dangerous?
Firstly, in my opinion, there's such a thing as good stress and the other one that's toxic. Good stress is okay because it helps you perform better, because it's like a kind of a pressure for you to perform well, but it's a good kind of stress.
But can you give an example? What can be good stress?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it right now.
Like some kind of challenge that you set for yourself?
Yeah, I would say so. There's nothing in particular that's coming up in my mind, but I know there is good stress.
So what if, for example, you, the thing that comes to my mind, maybe that would be an example of a good stress. So you have a wedding day. Are you stressed? Hell yeah, you're stressed. You're getting married.
But that's a good feeling.
That's a
because
good
you're
feeling.
excited.
Yes. So maybe these events, important events, graduating from school, is it scary? Yes, because you have, a whole new world ahead of you. But is it good stress? Maybe so.
Yeah, maybe. But if you stress too much before the event, then you can't enjoy the event itself.
Well, that's depending on how much, worrying you have. And then on the other hand, you have the toxic kind of stress. This is when, it affects your health, your mental health, especially because you don't perform well anymore and you feel a bit more detached with what you're doing or with the people around you. There's a change in behavior. You are no longer as cheerful as before. You become more irritable. So that one is a very negative kind of stress.
Oh yeah, been there, done that. So in what other ways can stress be dangerous? Can we actually die from stress?
Well, I don't know if we can die because of stress, but if we are too exhausted, like maybe stress can lead to maybe malnutrition or something, and it can cause some other mental disorders, I guess, if you don't ask for help or if you don't help yourself, if you don't sort things out.
I would say that you would die indirectly from stress, from the accumulation of all the effects of stress.
Yeah. So, that means that we can say, yes, you can, if you take, if you ignore it for long enough.
Yeah.
And what surprised me is that I'm quite interested in the topic of stress as someone who has gone through an extremely stressful period. I mean, 2020 was stressful enough for all of us, but at some point that was extra stressful for my family. And I started to read on the topic. I started to listen on the topic. And I was surprised to see that more than half of all diseases that people come to a doctor with are stress related. Not directly, maybe, but indirectly. And I would like to share some info that it might be surprising to some of our listeners and to you, it might be not. But so stress can lead to such diseases as obesity, which happened to me in 2014. So because, when you are stressed, you have higher levels of cortisol, which is the hormone of stress. And that, increases the amount of fat which is stored in the abdomen. So, which is, the most dangerous type of fat. So people start to gain weight. That can lead to obesity. And then obesity in turn can lead to more problems with health in general.
You know what? I don't want to take light of this topic because I know that it's somewhat sensitive. But, somehow as a person who is very skinny, by the way, that's me for those of you who haven't seen me yet. But anyway, my point is sometimes I get jealous with other people who gain weight when they are when they experience stress, because it's like, how come I don't gain weight whenever I feel very stressed, sometimes for long periods of time, but I'm still very skinny?
I think you're on the other side. You are among those people who actually lose weight when they are stressed. Am I jealous? Maybe a little bit, but yeah. So, and I was surprised to see that even colds and fevers and flu, well, not flu, but colds, simple colds can be caused by stress, because stress in general tends to weaken our immune system, and that makes us, susceptible and prone to different diseases. So in the list as well, we have cardiovascular diseases, heart attacks.
Right.
And the one that I liked least of all is premature aging. So there has been some evidence that stress can actually, affect how you age.
Oh my goodness. I can tell. I mean, not for myself personally, but I've seen some friends who have aged, and I know for a fact that it's because of stress.
Yeah, of course. For example, gray hair appear.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. Deep sigh. Yeah, so there's been a study that compared the DNA of mothers who had, who were under high stress because they were caring for a chronically ill child, with those who were not. So, and researchers found that a particular region of the chromosomes showed the effect of accelerated aging, and sometimes the aging accelerated about 9 to 17 additional years.
Wow.
So, which is, and which is why I guess people, those areas in the world where people live longer, there are more centenarians. They usually, those relaxed areas.
Laid back. Yeah.
Very laid back. So it seems to be a good idea to become a person like that.
Absolutely, it is.
So, and how do you de-stress then? So what do you do to avoid stress, to deal with stress? So what's your way?
You know what? For me, it's a mental battle, because in a way you have to know how to approach stress. In my case, what I do is that I do a bit of a self-talk, like to decide, is this worth the stress? I mean, should I be worried too much about this? You have to choose your battles. You cannot just be overwhelmed with everything that comes your way, be it in your personal relationship or at work. You have to, examine the situation. It's like, is this really as big as I think it is? Or maybe it's small, but I'm just magnifying it. Because, there is this tendency of some people when they see something and they see it from a different angle such that it looks too big for them, if you know what I mean. So it's all a matter of perspective. And for me, in my case, I am still in the process of working my way through any kind of stress, and to always remind myself, like, look at it from another angle. Maybe you're just seeing it way too much than what it truly is. So that's my way.
You have a very reasonable, personality then.
Because I want to live longer, and I want to live a happy life. I cannot just put myself into stressful situations.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, really. I'm so sorry for being talkative, but...
Oh, no, that's what we're here for.
But really, that's what I always tell myself. I want to live a happy life. I want to get rid of stress. And one way to approach that is to have a clear mind and to see things, again, with a clear mind. Yeah.
I know that it might take a lot of work to get to that point, but definitely worth it.
Yeah, it is worth it.
Maria, what about you? What do you do to de-stress?
I would say that probably I do the same as Ken has mentioned. Like I try to rationalize my fears or my concerns, and maybe think about the worst consequences of this, what might happen if, and then try to calm myself down by thinking. Because, I tend to overthink. I know it, but sometimes it helps.
Yeah, don't we all from time to time? That's actually what you guys have mentioned. This is one of the exercises that psychologists offer. So, and I remember through, over some time when I had sessions with a therapist, she was like, so why don't you like, let's say this or this? So what are you afraid of? And I said something, and she said, okay, so if that happens, what's so bad about it? So what's the worst thing that can happen? I said, well, A can happen. She said, okay, so A happens, the worst thing, what's then? What's the worst thing that can come out of this A? I said, well, B can come out of A. She's like, okay, so what's the worst thing then? And then when you start to think about it, like, okay, the worst thing happens. So you start to realize that sometimes it's not as big as you pictured it. So you can still get through it. Well, should you have some instruments too?
Yeah, but it takes time.
It does.
It takes this rational, logical approach. And sometimes maybe you need a person who can help you who can walk you through this. Not necessarily like a therapist, maybe a coach or just a friend who understands what kind of crazy person you are.
Yes, somebody.
Sometimes at the end of the day, you just need to talk to somebody to de-stress, because sometimes we feel like we have so much burden in our heart, in our minds, that we just have to get rid of them. And one way of doing that is to, share it with somebody, like talk it over, and you can even ask for some advice. So it's a very practical way of, approaching stress, or dealing with stress.
Yeah, and if we speak about more like practical things, maybe that more that are easier to use. Sometimes music helps me. Well, maybe it sounds banal, but it really does. I can just listen to music and maybe dance to it, and it helps me to relieve the amount of stress.
It's interesting that you have said that, because I was about to say the same thing about music, because really I love music. I just listen to happy songs, and it keeps all the blues away.
Well, I would say that the important thing is to do what you like, if you have some passion. And I remember just a couple of days ago, I was listening to a podcast of a doctor who's a psychologist. And he said that he had a case. So he had a patient who came to him and said, I don't feel happy. I just feel so stressed all the time, and I don't have any joy in life. And the doctor asked him, do you have any hobbies? He's like, no, I don't have time for this. So do you have anything you enjoy? What do you do after work? He said, well, I have kids. I need to take them to practice. Then I have my job. I have my wife. So I need to do this. I need to do house chores. And the doctor asked him, what did you used to enjoy when you were a child? He said, I had those train models that I really liked. And he asked, so do you have those train models now at home? He said, well, somewhere in the attic. So the doctor said, go take out those train toys or the models, just spend some time with them, probably not, the advice you would expect to hear when you pay several hundred for a session, but still. So, but the thing is that the doctor explained that very often it's what he called a passion deficiency. So when we don't have anything to, to give us joy, we become more stressed. So in addition to the usual stress, we have even more because we do not have anything that brings us, good emotions or positive emotions.
Right. So we need to find some time for ourselves because at the end of the day, I have me. That's what I have.
And that's the most important person in your life.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to remember. Yes.
Well, for some people, it can be sport. For me, unfortunately, no, I'm not a big sports fan, but I know that some people use it as a tool to relieve stress.
Whatever helps. Unless, I still think that, for example, drinking and smoking are not as good instruments in relieving stress because in the end, that might, lead to bigger problems. So I know that to a lot of people, that's like a correlation. If I feel stressed, I would like to drink a little bit. And I'm not that I'm judging. I am the same kind of person and I used to be, just like that. But
and the same about overeating or eating lots of sweet things. So it's not really healthy, but it can relieve. It can make you feel relieved for some moments, but then you feel maybe even worse.
Oh yeah. So, since we're talking not only about stress in general, but about, let's say difficulties of being a human in the 21st century in this fast-paced world, we can't but talk about one more, negative side of being, of living in this fast-paced world, which is sleep deprivation.
Oh my goodness.
Now let's be honest. Do you have solid 8-10 hours of sleep every day?
10?
Oh my goodness. I wish I could have.
What about 8? What happened to this 8 hours?
Minimum.
Well, that's why I said 8, 10, because to some people 8 is enough, but 8 is said to be, a healthy number. Then some people need 10 to feel totally re-energized. So what about you? Do you have 8 hours of sleep every day?
No.
What's your
Definitely
situation?
not.
So what's your situation with sleep like?
I didn't used to have any insomnia problems before I got sick with this new modern disease, fashionable disease that everyone tends to have.
Disease.
Yeah, like trendy disease. And after this, I noticed that I find it extremely difficult to get to sleep until 3 in the morning.
Oh.
It has been for a month or more.
That sounds like insomnia to me. I don't know.
It is insomnia.
It
Yeah,
is,
it
right?
is. I mean, so...
Not that Masha, denies it.
Yeah.
Well,
But I didn't used to have it before ever.
How do you deal with that?
I don't. I just wait. I just wait when it passes because I think it's something inside the body, maybe hormonal thing, or I don't know how this virus influenced my body. So I just wait till it passes. So it's becoming better now. Yeah.
Is it really becoming better, or do you think it's becoming better, or do you hope it's becoming better?
It is becoming better because I can get to sleep at a more decent time,
Oh. Okay, what about you? Have you ever had, in general, any kind of sleep problems?
I still have, sleep problems at the moment because I only sleep for about 4 to 5 hours a day. But it's interesting because despite that, whenever I go to my classes, I have more energy than my students.
Well, that's because that's
we are trained.
Yes. I mean, even the same thing, actually. So whenever I feel sleepy or tired, once I'm in class, once I start teaching, I feel energized because we deal with people.
Well, yeah.
We have students who energize us, but 4 or 5 hours to sleep. So why do you think is that?
Okay, firstly, let me make it clear that it's not always the case that whenever I go to my class, I'm energized. No. Of course, there are also days when I just feel really sleepy, drowsy because of lack of sleep. But I would say that for the most part, I I feel very energetic. And that's why whenever I hear students complain, say, for example, oh, I didn't sleep well last night. And then I ask them, how many hours of sleep did you have? And they would say, for example, 6, 7, or 8. What? You even slept more than me. That is so unfair. And I have more energy than you. How can that be? But then again, we have different rhythms in our body. So for others, you know, even if they sleep for 7 hours, still that's not enough. But for me, 5 hours, at least 5 hours, that's good enough for me. Now, how do I deal with it? I don't know, because at the moment, I just feel like it's already been a part of my system. So I'm kind of used to it. And that's why there are no complaints on my part, except on days when maybe partly influenced by the weather, because of course we, you know, when it's really cold outside, then it affects somehow, even though I'm used to this routine, of this sleep pattern. But there are other factors that you need to consider, because it could only be just 5 hours, but if the weather's so bad, then it can still make me feel down.
So why do you think you have this sleeping problem? What can be the reason?
So the reason, maybe because of I tend to sleep late. That's the problem. And therefore, especially if I have a morning class, then of course the number of hours is reduced. That's one. What else? Overthinking, because sometimes you do have plans, not just for your class, but you know, in your personal life, and you think, is it gonna work? What should I do for my holiday or whatever? It's like you take it with you to bed, and therefore it prevents you from sleeping immediately. So yeah,
right.
Interesting, because I have had sleeping problems, and sometimes I still have sleeping problems, but if it used to be something connected with my psychological state, now it's mostly because I am dumb. I try not to swear this, you know, in the podcast. So because
maybe because you work a lot.
Well, I actually know why I can't sleep, because first I might drink, you know, coffee late in the evening, and then blue screens. I am tempted, you know, to look at blue screens, to look at my phone, even when I go to bed. And then, well, it keeps me awake. Yeah. So I know that whenever I can't go to sleep, it's my problem. But if I know that I've been doing everything well, you know, no coffee in the evening, no blue screen 1 hour before sleep, and I still can't fall asleep, then there's one thing that has been saving me for the last 2 years, which is melatonin. So, but that's just my situation.
You mean like pills?
Yeah, well, it's not a medicine, but it's an additive, so a biological additive, because melatonin in general is the hormone of sleep that we have in our body. So 2-3 milligram, and it saves me, you know.
So is it like a real effect or maybe a placebo effect?
Well, the thing is that, I prefer to believe that it's a real effect. But the thing is that since melatonin is, you know, an additive, and, you know, it works in such a way that when you take melatonin, you're not supposed to have, you know, to look at blue screen for half an hour. And it, of course, it doesn't, you know, make you fall asleep immediately. And what it does, it's not only help you fall asleep, but to to sleep better, not to wake up, you know, at tiniest sounds. The downside for me personally is that it's a little bit more difficult to get up in the morning. You feel, you know, a little bit more sleepy than you usually do. That's the downside. But then again, to feel sleepy in the morning or to lie awake until 3 a.m.?
Yeah.
That's a question.
Everyone needs to decide for themselves. So I have a question, guys. Do you sometimes maybe take short naps in the middle of the day? Because I sometimes do. If I have a chance
I totally do. I totally do.
Me too. I mean,
it can help.
It can. Although, you know, you never know in what state you're going to wake up, you know, whether, because there are two ways. Either very energized or, you know, you wake up like, what year is it? Where am I?
Yeah, it depends on maybe what time it is and how long you have been sleeping.
Oh my God. And speaking of which, because last year when we had this somewhat, when students were not allowed to go to schools, right? And we had to do our classes online. So that time I had the opportunity to take some breaks, take a nap, but then it's like a rude awakening when I realized, oh my God, it's only 5 minutes before the class. Or when, for example, it's exactly the time for my class, and then I need to rush.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
That happened to
alarm
me.
clock does help.
Well, yeah, but sometimes you miss it.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
I mean that it happens. So, and it happened to me.
Yeah.
Wow.
How many alarm clocks do you guys set?
2.
2, yeah.
But I hit snooze 10 times. That's,
Yep.
you know, that's different. So yeah, 2 alarm clocks, but hitting snooze 10 times maybe.
My goodness.
Depends. So, wait, are you a person who sets only 1 alarm clock?
Yes.
Do you people exist? Wow.
Like so self-disciplined.
Wow.
Well, sometimes I miss it. That's why I.
Okay, although, you know, I was so shocked, but I have an example of my mom who is an unbelievable person because she never sets an alarm clock. So when she was
Wow.
working, she would wake up 6:30 every single day and she has never overslept. Never. I was like, how are you doing this, woman? And she said, I guess it's just my biological clock. So every single day, 6:30, she would wake up,
Wow.
get ready, go to work.
I envy her.
I, you know, that would be too risky for me to do.
I don't know if I envy or just feel
Yeah.
amazed.
Maybe
Good for
that's
her,
maybe
yeah.
that's because she was working 9 to 5 for 30 something years of her life. Maybe that. But then again, if I work 9 to 5, even for 10 years of my life, 5 years,
Yeah.
I seriously doubt I would be able to wake up at 6 or 6:30 every single day without an alarm. So and why is sleep deprivation dangerous? So what can that lead to?
It can lead to a lot of, health problems.
Such as
Yeah, good question. Such as
I'm
what?
here to tell you
So it
everything
can
about it.
multiply the amount of stress you have.
It
Oh,
can
yeah,
multiply
of
the amount of
course.
stress. Yes. I have, again, I'm here to tell you about the bad effects. So first of all, there was a situation when, an experiment rather, when a person decided not to sleep at all. So
What do you mean, like,
not
sleep
just
at all?
just
For how long?
Well, that was the point of the experiment. He wanted to see how long he would handle. In the end, he didn't sleep for 11 days.
And he survived?
He did, but after it was hard, but it was controlled. It was controlled. So he was keeping some kind of not a diary, but he was saying things because he was unable to, when you touch an object with your hand, you understand what you're touching, right?
Right.
So a hard object, this is a cup that I'm touching, a pen. So on the second day without sleep, he wasn't able to do that anymore. So he was seeing that he touched something, but he didn't feel it. So it was difficult for him. He lost his concentration, absolutely inattentive. On the third day, he started hallucinating.
Of
And then
course.
it just went down the hill. But in general, that experiment happened in 1965. So, and that caused, among other things, to pay more attention, on the research of sleep. And it turned out that if you are sleep deprived, and by that, we would mean consistently getting less than 6 hours of sleep. Can be listening very carefully right
Yeah,
now.
oh my
Less than
goodness.
6 hours of sleep consistently. So it can lead to hormonal imbalance because again, stress, cortisol, all that is connected. It can affect your learning ability, mood, and reaction time, which is also understandable. You become less attentive. And then it leads to high blood pressure. It can lead to obesity as well, because again, it is all related to stress. as
Yeah,
we've
if
talked
you don't get
prior.
enough sleep, you will get more food.
Yeah, sleep more, eat less.
Like balance. Yeah.
And then if you, again, consistently get less than 6 hours of sleep, that increases the risk of a stroke by 4.5 times.
Wow.
So, yes.
Thanks for giving me stress because of this information.
No, I'm trying to be
I'm
helpful.
kidding. I know. I'm kidding.
So, and why is it important? Because during the day, so there is a certain amount of waste product that, accumulate in our brain. And one of them is, let's say, adenosine and melatonin, which, as they build up, the more they build up, the sleepier we feel. So, and there are waste products in our brain. And then when we sleep, this lymphatic system actually washes the waste products away. So giving more energy to us when we wake up. And it's very difficult to do when we are, awake. And that's what caffeine does, for example. Caffeine blocks adenosine. So even as it builds up, we do not feel sleepy. So if we drink coffee all day long and then don't get sleep and then again drink a lot of coffee, that
we become zombies.
Yeah.
We do.
So but guys, sorry, do I interrupt?
No, I'm done.
Well, we all know about these famous people like Napoleon or some others who didn't used to sleep a lot. I don't know. Maybe it's a myth. Do you think it's a myth?
Maybe that's why he tried to invade Russia in the middle of winter. There might be a connection, between these two.
That could be. Well,
because I know that some people just don't want to spend 1/3 of their life sleeping because they have so many things to do.
I have two comments about that. So first of all, it's their right. So they are jeopardizing their health. So it's their choice. If they want to risk it, and we do not know what quality of life they have and how good their health is. So this is the one point. The same with, working 80 hours a week. We can do that if we want to.
For some time.
But is it worth it? Another question. And then the second comment I have is that there are always exceptions. There are some kind of, not anomalies maybe, but there are people who can actually get 5 hours of sleep and that's enough for them. They do not feel sleepy. They feel perfectly energized. So maybe for them, it's the norm. They just, the exception to the rule.
So I'm not going to die yet.
Yeah, maybe it's your normal
that's your norm.
routine.
Yes, maybe that's your norm. So you get your 5 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep. If you feel perfectly energized, that's your norm. For example, for me, if I sleep for 8 hours, that's enough. But I feel totally energized only after 9 or 10 hours, like the perfect amount.
Right.
Yeah, I had a friend who was sleeping 14, 15, 16 hours a day sometimes, and she was still not feeling energized. And it was something I could not understand. And in the end, it turned out that she had a problem with the nose. So she only got, let's say 80% of oxygen when she was supposed to get 95, 96, 97. So that's why she could never feel energized enough. So she spent most of her time in bed. So, yeah. So...
Wow.
But sleep is important.
It is.
So whoever's listening, please try to get, solid 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep and take care of yourself.
Don't do what I do, okay?
Yeah, don't.
Unless you feel perfectly okay.
Yeah, well.
Unless. All right. So, and while talking about, mental states and stress and whatnot, we can't but mention two most common mental disorders in the whole world, which are depression and anxiety. So, and I have a little bit of statistics. So it says that in the US, for example, it's more than 40% of adults that are suffer with or suffer from depression and struggle with mental illness. In Russia, it says that every 5th citizen of Russia has some kind of struggles with mental health. So yeah, and I would like to ask you, have you ever had any kind of an experience with depression? If so, what helped you personally to get through this? Feel free not to answer. It's, if you want to share. If you don't.
Well, Masha, can I go ahead?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Okay. As I've always said to my students, my life is a bit of an open book, and I always share my own personal experiences with them. And in my case, of course, I'm just human, and there are certain things that happen in my life which can make me really sad, and therefore I feel depressed. One specific instance was back in 2013. That was the first time for me to work abroad in Kazakhstan specifically. And things were not going well as I imagined them to be in terms of work, in terms of love life, and so many other things. And mind you, that time I was so depressed that I came to a point that I was sitting by the window. By the way, I lived on the 3rd floor, and you can just imagine what was going on in my head. I tried to open the window, look down, and I said, what are the chances of me, dying the moment I jump out of the window? It's like, am I gonna die just with 3 floors? Yeah. So, but then again, it was a bit of a comedy, because even though I was feeling sad that time, I was also thinking, what if I die? It's gonna be, like big news in the Philippines and Kazakhstan, because in the headlines it will go like this, like Filipino English teacher committed suicide. Yeah. And I don't think I want to be known
and remembered by that only, yeah.
Exactly, that way. So I thought to myself, are you sure you really want to do this? And then I was also thinking, what if I survive? Then I will become an invalid. I will be sitting on a wheelchair and people are going to ask me, hey, what happened to you? And then I look up to them and tell them, well, I attempted to commit suicide, but unfortunately it didn't work for me.
So yeah, neither of the scenarios were, pleasant.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I don't want to take light of this topic, because I know it's something serious, and I'm sure that other people, maybe they don't even want to admit it to themselves that they, at some point in their lives, they thought about, committing suicide. But I'm just sharing my experience because I want people to know that as a regular human being, I did struggle with that. But then again, I'm thankful because my rational mind told me that, it's not going to do me any good. And I don't want to be remembered for that. It's like, I'm going back to the Philippines. Well, my body, my remains. That's something that I don't want to happen. So, you know what? After contemplating for hours and hours by the window, I told myself, oh, come on, forget it. Just get yourselves a cup of tea and just go to bed. And guess what? That's what I did. And the next day I thought, oh my God, thank God I didn't, I didn't do it. Otherwise,
so you
oh my
woke
goodness.
up with a fresher,
Exactly.
In the morning, things don't seem so.
Do you think
so
do you think that was caused by some kind of a culture shock that you had?
I would say that's one of the contributing factors. Yeah. And the fact that, we go back to expectation versus reality. Because remember, that was my first time to work abroad, and I had my, ideals in mind that it would be perfect. It's going to be like this and like that. But then reality hits you, and then you realize, oh, okay, we're back to earth.
I can relate to so much that you have just said, because my diagnosed depression actually happened as a result of a culture shock in the US. So yeah, I can understand everything you're saying right now. Yeah. So, and actually, what if we quickly say what can be the symptoms of depression? Just so you know, if you feel any of those, just go seek help. This is what I always say to anyone. Any sign of you feeling out of normal, go seek help. That can save you. So the World Health Organization says that the most common symptoms of depression would be sadness, loss of interest or pleasure in general, feelings of guilt or low self-worth, disturbed sleep, appetite, and in general feeling of, fatigue, poor concentration that last for a week and longer. So of course, because we all have, days when we feel fatigue, when we feel sad, but if it lasts, so yeah, it's very important to share and very important to go seek help. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that helps to all of our listeners, and I hope they keep that in mind.
Yeah, I told you, listeners, this is not an easy topic that we're talking about today, but an important one, nevertheless.
Right.
So,
well, I guess that in Russia, people are not used to getting help.
That's what we need to change, definitely. So, but I like to see that more and more people try to, reach out. And, there's one thing that people do not usually say about, maybe that's not that widely known or something, but not many people know and not many people say that when you are depressed, you do not remember what has happened to you. So you have to have some kind of a partial memory loss, should we say? So, and you do not tend to remember what you did on a certain day. You don't remember how you felt. So, and this is one of the regrets I have in my life, because at some point in the past, I took an amazing 3-week trip around the west coast of the US. I don't remember half of that. Like, I remember going. I have no idea what I saw. I don't remember what I did on almost half of the time, because I was feeling so bad and I hadn't reached out for help at that moment. So yeah, don't be dumb like me. Again, reach out and get help if you feel depressed. And the second also very common state that a lot of people suffer from is anxiety. So what do you know about anxiety? So what can you say are the symptoms of it?
Worrying too much. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Overthinking.
Exactly.
Again. Overthinking. So, I wasn't diagnosed with depression. Like, I haven't been. I don't think that I have it. But I have this generalized anxiety syndrome. And I know it for sure. And I was diagnosed with this. And so it's like you tend to overthink and you tend to focus on something that is irrelevant, maybe. So, and the main thing here is to let it be, like to value everything that you have. And just be yourself, let yourself think if you need, and don't think that you are in the wrong because you have these feelings.
So basically you're telling us also that's your way of coping with it, like how to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
So, and do you have any other techniques maybe, or something that works for you when you have anxiety attacks? Because it's different for every person, of course. So...
Well, recently, for example, like a couple of years ago in class, some of my students told me that they use meditation to help them. I have never tried it. I don't know. To me, it seems something very difficult, and I'm a little bit afraid of it. I don't know.
I actually have an opinion on meditation that some people might not agree with. And again, remember the disclaimer. This is my subjective opinion, which you can agree or disagree on. It doesn't make it wrong or right. But I believe that meditation is not the best tool for anxiety for one reason. So meditation for anxiety, it's like ibuprofen for a headache, for, let's say, a migraine or something like that, or a stomachache that is consistent. So what you do with it, you get rid of the symptoms. But you do not, help with the reason, the deeper reason with that. So which makes it a good tool if you want to get through the day, for example, or if it hits you in the middle of the road, let's say, or when you're doing something, that can be a good tool. But then it's always better to work with the reason or with something
like
deeper.
The core of it.
Or at least, it can have some effect if it's long-term effects. So if you do it consistently, regularly for a long time, then it can have some kind of a lasting effect, that accumulates. But other than that, again, this is my personal opinion.
Right.
So if this ibuprofen meditation is what you need,
well, I just think that it's something that maybe should be done in a proper way, because I'm not sure that I could do it myself, like by watching some YouTube video. So, but what I can do is I can think it over, think my problems over and rationalize them, and I can let myself feel what I feel. I can let me be me. And I am now trying to accept myself, and I try not to be guilty of who I am, like what type of person I am and what I feel. That's what helps.
Amen.
Amen to that. So, and the last thing that I would like to talk about is something that all professionals among all professions have faced, or might have faced, might have thought about, is a burnout. So, what is it?
I guess at some point in our lives, especially for our listeners who have had any kind of work, especially for a long time, I think it's something that is unavoidable, especially if you are, let's say, overworked and you feel like you're no longer appreciated, and you feel like you can no longer do any kind of improvement in your job. Or if you, let's say, for example, you work for long hours, because it comes from the idea of being tired, or you're sick and tired of doing the same thing, no changes, and that you don't even have time for yourself. So you will really get burnt out.
So we can say that then the symptoms would be unwillingness to work, maybe fatigue as well, getting no joy from what you're
when
doing.
You start hating your work. Yeah.
I think it's like a red flag. You have a thought like, I hate it, I don't want to do that. That's a red flag that you're on your way to a burnout.
Especially when you feel like you're dragging yourself to work. It's like, oh my God, another day, another struggle.
Yeah. So, and how can people avoid, avoid, or if that has happened, go through a burnout?
Well, sometimes, can I go ahead? Sometimes a better option is just to change your job, because now I have something particular on my mind. I have a friend who has been working at a job that she doesn't like for several years already, but she doesn't have this maybe courage to change it, and her relatives, her family does not support her in her decision to leave, and she struggles. She has been struggling all the time. Sometimes maybe for 2 weeks she feels better, then again she has this this struggle. And I am afraid that it can lead to real depression, clinical.
I agree with that. And then for those who cannot afford to leave their job, especially if, in times of crises and, it's difficult to find another job, I think you just have to sometimes take some time off work if you could afford, if you're allowed to do so. Because, for example, in my case, I was really burnt out when I was in Kazakhstan, because there was a time for straight 2 years from 2015 when I came back to work. From 2015 to 2017, 2 years without long-term holidays. Absolutely worked for 2 years without any holidays. And of course, naturally, I felt that I was burnt out. And so I thought to myself, maybe I need a holiday. But then again, it was a little too late because I was just too sick and tired of my job that I had to quit, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would say that having proper rest is a good way, to deal with burnout. But when we say rest, it means no checking, not doing anything connected with work. Just, doing something that gives you joy and pleasure, nothing related. And if we want to avoid and prevent burnout in the first place, I think it would be good if we got regular breaks. If you have days off in the weekend, do not do work in the weekend.
Yeah.
So do not, be tempted to check your emails at night before going to sleep. And don't be tempted to put too much into your to-do list, because you think, I need to do this and this and this and this and this, and you have higher expectations. Then, of course, you feel, disappointed in yourself when you don't do all of, what you have planned. So, and that just, builds up and can lead to that. So just take care of yourself. You only have you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good routine can help. It sounds maybe that it's suitable more for children, but adults also need routines. Healthy routines. For example, I remember one advice that I heard from a psychologist when I worked at a secondary school. He said that, try not to bring work home. Well, now it's becoming more and more difficult because we work from home. Nowadays. So at least we need to maybe to isolate our workplace from our private place.
But yeah, it's getting so difficult to do.
So when you work, so you should be dressed as you are dressed when you work in the office, for example. Don't maybe work in your pajamas. Because you're just mixing it up.
Because in this case, the boundary between work and life just gets blurred. So you do not longer differentiate where is work and where is your life.
And it also comes with responsibility on your part to be able to manage your time well and to make sure that you don't overcrowd your to-do list, because sometimes, some people are perfectionists. They want to do things all at one time. Yeah. So
And everything should be done perfectly at the same time.
exactly. So you're just creating a lot of, stress to yourself.
Yeah.
And you can get burnt out as an effect.
All right. So, dear listeners, take care of yourself. You only have you. So you should care and appreciate yourself.
And try to be at peace with yourself.
Love yourself.
Love yourself. Amen.
Amen.
So, all right. Well, that was the Big Apple School podcast. And today we discussed psychological difficulties of living in the 21st century. We talked about stress, how we de-stress, and the, negative consequences of stress. We talked about sleep deprivation. We briefly talked about depression, anxiety, and our experiences with that. So, thank you for listening. And remember, if you struggle to understand any part of our conversation, please go to our website, which is bigappleschool.com/podcast. You can find full scripts of each episode there, and you can read and listen. Amazing. Also, if you want to get more content which will help you learn English, follow us on the social media such as Instagram, VK, YouTube, basically everywhere. Just search our name, which is, again, Big Apple School. So that was Katya, and my guests for today were
Ken
and
Maria.
Stay tuned, and we'll see you around.